They were childhood friends that fell hard for each other.
He just swept her off her feet and she fell in love with him.
A devoted mother and a military man with 3 beautiful children.
They seem to be living a typical American dream lifestyle.
But just when it seemed their happy lives were complete, a brutal murder rips their world apart.
But something had to have gone horribly wrong for this scenario to emerge.
As detectives dig into the investigation, they discover a sinister plot.
The allegations that were being made floored me, that somebody would do something like that.
When we found out who it was just shocking.
The web of lies so tangled, it leaves everyone wondering if they'll ever know the truth.
And there were just all of these layers to this.
Now we're trying to figure out, okay, how does all this come together?
Nothing was adding up.
Everything just kept pulling us in more and more. What's really going on here?
Monday, October 26, 2009. All is quiet in Logan Square, a charming neighborhood on Chicago's North Side. But that evening, 911 receives a call from this peaceful pocket of the Windy City.
This is 911. You need police or fire?
I'm not sure.
The caller identifies himself as Darron Brewer, and he's concerned about his 22-year-old wife, Kenyatae. Darron says she disappeared late Sunday night.
Did you try to contact her by phone?
Yes, me, her mom, dad, and sister been calling her all day and texting, and no response.
Darron hasn't heard from Kenyatae, but he tells the 911 operator that he's found something that could help police track her down.
And as we're driving, we see my car in the alley.
Okay, one that she drives all the time?
Yes.
Oh, okay. What type of vehicle is it?
It's a 2001 Chevy.
Okay, we're going to send the police. Belden and Kildare, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
As police head to Logan Square to check things out, Darron waits for word about his beloved wife. But no one could imagine just how dark and twisted this troubling case was about to get. Kenyatae Collier-Brewer was a born and bred Chicago girl. The oldest of 3 siblings, she always stood out in a crowd, even at a young age.
Kenyatae, she just had a great heart. She loved to smile. She just loved to have fun. Kenyatae was a very bright student, inquisitive growing up. She was very outgoing, just a good-spirited person.
But Kenyatae wasn't just smart. She was blessed with brains and beauty.
She went to Clementi High School, graduated there, and they just knew her as to be a vivacious young woman.
Oh yeah, all the boys liked her. She was not a big flirt, but everyone told her how pretty she was.
And with every good-looking young man in her neighborhood trying their best to get with her, Kenyatae sometimes found it hard to hold out for Mr. Right. By the time she was 18, she was pregnant with her first child.
I remember when she first had her first son, how happy she was and excited she was. And she just wanted to be a really good mother.
The second she began having children, she became very serious about it. Going back to school, studying nursing, graduating with honors, and just everything about her life was just geared toward her son.
I believe every morning that she woke up, that was her goal, to make life, as good as she could for her child.
After graduating, Kenyatae began working as a nurse's assistant and had high hopes of making a career out of doing something she loved.
She just loved helping people. She loved working with the elderly. She loved giving back. She loved taking care of people.
By 2006, everything was coming together for this bright young woman. But she also wanted the right man by her side.
Kenyatae?
Darron, hi.
Hey.
Turns out, he had been hiding in plain sight.
Actually knew Darron Brewer from early in her childhood, and at some point they ended up reuniting.
And when their paths crossed again in adulthood, the chemistry was undeniable.
They had known each other for such a long time. There was that belief that they were meant to be together.
I'm definitely gonna call you.
He just swept her off her feet and she fell in love with him. and she really adored him.
Like Kenyatae, fellow Chicago native Darron Brewer was smart and ambitious.
He had a pretty big personality. He seemed to be an intelligent person.
He was making a name for himself. He had a nice job at the Illinois National Guard.
It didn't take long for Kenyatae to realize she wanted to spend her life with Darron.
It was kind of a whirlwind romance by all accounts. Some people fall in love, in a few months and they get married and they live happily ever after. And
her and Darron were very young and they got married. She just wanted to really complete her life.
It would be a source of pride for her to now be married and to have, a husband who was present and sort of the traditional family life.
Before long, that life included 2 more kids of their own. Both at the young age of 22, Kenyatae and Darron seemed to have it all.
They were really building a solid foundation. They were really looking like the perfect couple. They were a great family, the house with the white picket fence.
She had married the man of her dreams, man in uniform, that was helping her with her first son, and they had 2 other beautiful children. She also had a good job. She was continuing her education, so she felt that she was living out her dreams.
Which makes it all the more surprising when Kenyatae goes missing one Sunday night in October of 2009. Early the next morning, Darron reaches out to friends and family for help.
Hello?
Have you heard from Kenyatae?
No, I haven't talked to her today.
When we made contact with Darron, he said that they had a normal evening. Kenyatae came in from work, put the kids down. He was tired, was going to bed.
And she went out with a couple of friends.
He sent her a text message asking her to bring back milk. He got no response. He went to sleep, woke up, and she still wasn't home.
We started to panic. So we felt that it was time for the authorities to get involved. And the tension continued to build, and we were nervous and worried about her.
Kenyatae's disappearance it just didn't fit with her character. She was not someone who would just disappear without any sort of explanation or a phone call just to say, I'm gonna be running late.
This was an aberration. It wasn't her pattern, and she's a dedicated mom, so for her not to call, they were alarmed at that time.
8 hours into Kenyatae's disappearance, Darron contacts police.
I'd like to report a missing person.
But is told he'd have to wait a few more hours before he can file a missing persons report.
Police often tell people to wait 24 hours to report someone missing to make sure they actually are missing. It could be a false alarm. A lot of times people will, they may just not want to talk to a certain person and they just won't answer their phone calls or they won't come home or something and they're actually okay.
Left with few options, Darron holds out hope that his wife would soon turn up. But that evening, after picking up their kids from daycare, Darron spots something chilling along his drive home.
He discovers his wife's vehicle parked unattended in an alley. That's when he makes a 911 call.
With 3 small children in the car, Darron decides it's best not to stop and examine his wife's car. Instead, he drives the short distance home and waits for law enforcement to search the vehicle.
When the police first arrived at the car, there was nothing unusual. The car had a couple of tickets on it, but there was no damage to the car, and there was no one inside.
Unlocked.
The doors were unlocked. They searched the inside of the vehicle, and they didn't find anything.
Nothing seemed unusual.
But moments later, everything changes.
One of the officers pressed the trunk release button. The other officer at the rear of the vehicle at that time made a gruesome discovery.
There was a woman's body stuffed inside. She was wearing a nurse's uniform. She had blood covering her head. She was clearly deceased.
She still had her name tag on, so they knew it was Darron's wife, Kenyatae Brewer.
So now, at this point, the missing persons case has turned into a homicide.
At that moment, it's just like our hearts just broke. Could not believe it.
Why would someone kill this popular, attractive young woman who seemingly had everything going for her? The idea that someone would come in and just snuff her out just didn't make sense.
She couldn't have possibly done anything to deserve this.
What investigators don't realize is that Kenyatae's mysterious death is about to open a Pandora's box of deception and greed, the horrific likes of which no one will ever forget.
Everyone has been shocked, hoping that it was still not true.
Devoted couple Darron Brewer and Kenyatae Collier-Brewer had promising careers, a loving marriage, and a happy home with 3 adorable children.
They seem to be living the typical American dream lifestyle. He was a nice-looking fellow employed with the Illinois National Guard in service to his country, and she was a nurse's assistant, assisting the elderly.
But all that changed on October 26, 2009. After having gone missing, Kenyatae is found dead in the trunk of her own car in the northwest side of Chicago.
Kenyatae is church-going, loving mother and wife, not the person that you would expect to end up in this situation. At this point, her death is still a complete mystery.
How does a lady like her end up in the back of a trunk? She seems like the last person that would be the victim of this type of crime.
At the crime scene, detectives try to find some answers to this mystery.
What we got?
Investigators were called to the scene. They were trying to figure out what happened, what was going on, what happened to this woman who's stuffed in the trunk with a nurse's uniform on.
They're looking at the body, and it's obvious that Kenyatae has been shot in the head. Her body is then removed to confirm her cause of death and hopefully to find some evidence that can be linked back to the killer.
Unfortunately, the scene provides few clues as to how Kenyatae ended up there.
You're looking for a shell casing from the bullet. You're looking for a gun. You're looking for a shoe, a glove, anything that would give you an idea of who the suspect was.
Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Nothing seemed out of place. There were no clues as to say what happened, what led up to this.
Without hard evidence, detectives must consider all possibilities.
Was it a robbery gone bad? Was it a simple carjacking? Did the crime happen here? Or was her body dumped here?
Robberies and carjackings are crimes of opportunity, and the people that perpetrate those crimes, generally they select likely victims. She would have probably been an appealing target with a nurse's uniform, small build, 5'2", 130 pounds. That had to be considered.
But as police know, a deadly robbery would be highly unusual in the quiet Logan Square neighborhood.
Carjackings, robberies, things of that nature in that particular area don't happen with any high frequency at all. Crime scene tape in this neighborhood was a big deal. A canvass was conducted. That's standard, did anybody see anything, hear anything?
While CSIs continue to process the scene, detectives are left with the grim task of informing Kenyatae's husband, Darron, of his wife's death.
We've identified the body of your deceased wife.
The police let him know that they did find his wife. Darron is distraught that someone could do something like this to the mother of his children. He can't imagine that someone would hurt her. Not his caring wife, not the woman that everyone loved. He just can't imagine that someone would want to hurt her like this.
We are sorry for your loss.
Detectives have no reason to suspect Darron had anything to do with his wife's death. But maybe Darron can help them track down the killer.
Did your wife have any enemies?
Was there previous history of violence? Did she have a criminal background? Did she live a high-risk lifestyle?
Darron is positive Kenyatae wasn't involved in any illegal activity. But he then says something startling.
There was this one incident last year.
Approximately a year earlier, Kenyatae was exiting the residence along with her husband, Darron. She actually sustained a gunshot while she was 6 months pregnant. And in fact, her husband had also sustained a less serious injury as well during that attack.
Anything ever developed from that?
No, sir.
Was there anything else that's ever happened?
A few weeks before her murder, she was cut in the face with a bottle. Someone threw a bottle at her while she was in the car.
They were sitting at a stoplight, and all of a sudden here comes this bottle flying through the window and cut her face pretty badly.
Initially, it seemed the attacks on Kenyatae were random and unrelated. But now, detectives wonder if they are somehow connected to our murder.
Give us a call if there's anything else you can think of.
Detectives obviously had to take them into consideration if there was some type of a ongoing threat to her person.
If someone has been attacked and then turns up dead, it seems as though this may not be a random act of violence. Detectives have to ask themselves then if someone is out to get her.
It seems impossible that this devoted mother and nurse's assistant could have any enemies whatsoever. But detectives are about to learn that a shocking secret may have sparked a vicious act of retribution.
The lies and jealousy and the betrayal is unreal.
"22-year-olds Darron Brewer and Kenyatae Collier-Brewer and their 3 kids had a picture-perfect life together. But that fairy tale was shattered when Kenyatae was found shot dead in the trunk of her own car.
This young woman who was bursting with energy was gone, and now there's this void. In one fell swoop, the mother is gone, and now these children are motherless. This is somebody who had family, who loved her.
The family was grieving, but then also there's her husband, Darron. He's grieving. He's lost his wife, the mother of his kids. So everyone is just hurting at this point.
They were reeling, just totally reeling, trying to make sense of all of it.
Meanwhile, detectives are trying to figure out if Kenyatae had been specifically targeted. Darron tells them she had been the victim of 2 violent crimes over the past year.
When these crimes continue to happen to someone, it becomes a bit of a mystery. It starts to look like someone is actually out to hurt her, that she's not just a random victim.
The second attack on Kenyatae left severe cuts to her face. The detectives have to ask then, could this be more personal? Is this a personal vendetta someone has against her?
Investigators need to learn more about their victim, so they go to her family. Like husband Darron, they're still overwhelmed by Kenyatae's death.
Our worst nightmare had come true. My mind still couldn't wrap around what had happened.
She worked hard. She didn't do any drugs. She took care of her family. She did a lot of family-oriented activities.
Kenyatae's family said she didn't have an enemy in the world, but she was shot and killed. So you kind of have to wonder.
When she left work, did someone follow her? Did the car break down? Our minds was just racing and just really could not come to grips with still who could have done this to her.
With the family at a loss for an explanation, and with police finding no suspects in the first 2 attacks, the investigation seems to have hit a dead end. That is, until police ask about Kenyatae and Darron's relationship.
They had a good relationship. Darron was very good with the kids.
Darron Brewer looked like a family man. He was in the military. He expected to be deployed out to Afghanistan.
But all was not well in paradise.
It appears that there's a lot more to the story that meets the eye.
When you say appeared to be the perfect couple, could you elaborate?
The family has learned that Darron has been keeping a deep, dark secret.
He was having an affair.
He's got another lover.
With whom?
It was a man.
Darron had been in the closet and in denial about his sexual orientation, but it got to the point where he just couldn't deny it anymore. Darron was gay and was having an affair.
It was still somewhat shocking to some of the family members and maybe to Kenyatae as well that the affair he was having was in fact with a man.
But apparently, Darron had no intention of leaving his wife.
Even though Darron came clean to Kenyatae that he was gay, he may not have wanted a divorce because it could adversely affect his career with the military.
He has this polished image, you know, I'm a military man, I have a wife, I have kids that I love. So no one can find out about this. No one can find out how he's been living a double life.
He had a military career at risk. He had this, at least on paper, little family unit that he was trying to maintain for appearances.
According to Kenyatae's family, even after she discovered Darron's secret life, the couple continued to live together. But Kenyatae became increasingly unhappy while Darron sought comfort in the arms of his male lover.
Once you start hearing those details, all it just leaves you with more and more questions. And everything just kept pulling this in more and more. Like, what's really going on here?
The family is now wondering if this has something to do with Kenyatae's death.
In speaking to Kenyatae's family, detectives learned the man Darron has been seeing is named Joseph Matthews.
When detectives determine that someone is having an affair, it raises all sorts of questions. Love triangles can create all kinds of strange emotions, including jealousy.
That's a pretty big moment, because now you've got what you think is some sort of motive.
If Darron doesn't want to get a divorce because he doesn't want to put his career at risk, that could have caused problems for Darron's boyfriend. Detectives have to consider whether Darron's boyfriend wanted to end the marriage at any cost. Detectives may wonder how far Darron's boyfriend is willing to go to have Darron all to himself. Did Darron's boyfriend's jealousy get the best of him?
There's only one way to find out. Detectives must find Darron's boyfriend.
He's become involved in this now, whether he wants to be or not.
On the evening of October 26, 2009, police track down Joseph Matthews and bring him in for questioning.
Have a seat here.
Detectives immediately confront him about his relationship with Darron.
How long have you known each other?
I've known him since May.
Were you intimate?
Yes, we were.
Joseph is forthcoming about his relationship with Darron, and when the conversation turns to Kenyatae, Joseph makes a startling admission.
I knew they had kids, but Darron never told me he was married.
Not only does Joseph deny harboring any ill will towards Kenyatae, he seems genuinely upset about her death. Still, detectives are curious about his whereabouts on the night of October 25th. According to Joseph, while he admits that he saw Darron earlier that evening, he was at home, in bed, at the time of the crime.
Anyone see you?
Yeah, my roommates.
You have a number we can call?
Yeah.
Detectives speak to Joseph's roommates and ultimately verify his alibi. At that point, they have no choice but to cut him loose. With their primary suspect all but eliminated, police can't help but wonder, if Joseph didn't kill Kenyatae, then who did? Before detectives can consider their next move, they get a surprising new lead.
Darron comes to the police with a bombshell.
What can you tell us, Darron?
I know who killed my wife.
Who?
It was my brother.
He named his brother Darron as being the gunman who actually shot and killed Kenyatae.
Police are stunned. Darron has just identified his wife's killer. But why would Darron's brother Darron want to kill Kenyatae? According to Darron, Kenyatae came to him a few weeks earlier with a disturbing allegation.
Kenyatae tells her husband that in fact his brother came over and forcibly raped her.
Darron confronted his brother, but his brother said that it was not a rape.
He said it was consensual.
She was not that type of a person. She loved her husband, she loved her kids. So I find it very hard to believe that she consented to have sex with him, period. Something was going on. There was something more behind the scenes that was going on with this situation.
According to Darron, if the sex wasn't consensual, then Darron had ample motive to murder Kenyatae.
Darron thinks that he may have killed Kenyatae to keep her quiet.
If Darron thought Kenyatae may go to the police and accuse him of rape, that might be a motive for murder. Rape is a very serious charge.
It's a stunning accusation, but police are curious why Darron waited so long to tell them.
He's my brother.
He says he didn't say anything at first because it was his brother, but now he's afraid for his and his children's safety. He thinks he needs police protection.
This, of course, is a huge development in the case. They have a murder suspect just land in their laps.
Do you know where your brother is?
He's at his girlfriend's house.
We're gonna need an address.
Darron tells police that Darron has been staying with his girlfriend and gives them the address. They hit the ground running. They go to the house. Police think they're about to get their suspect.
Is Mr. Poe on the premises right now?
He's nowhere to be found.
They make contact with the girlfriend at location, and in short order, she gives them a consent to search.
Go ahead, guys.
She lets them search the place. They scour the apartment, and between two mattresses, they find a .380 semi-automatic pistol.
Detective.
The gun is the same caliber as the bullet recovered from Kenyatae's body.
I have a gun.
Police are hot on his trail, and he's nice enough to leave the murder weapon right there, you know, where he laid his head.
At this point in the investigations, the detectives have a motive. They have the weapon. They just need to find the suspect.
But just when it appears they are on the verge of solving the case, detectives get a tip that changes everything.
It's definitely an onion where layers are being peeled back. What are we gonna find out now about this case?
Kenyatae Collier-Brewer, a beautiful mother of 3, was discovered dead, stuffed in the trunk of her car. The crime itself was shocking enough. But investigators were even more surprised to learn that Kenyatae's husband, Darron, was having an affair with another man. But during his interrogation, Darron named his own brother, Dewan Poe, as the killer.
When Darron comes forward and points the finger at his brother, this is a huge development in the case. The murder suspect has landed in their laps, and it changes the whole course of the investigation.
Darron says he thinks Dewan killed her to keep her quiet about an alleged rape Dewan committed against Kenyatae.
The motivation came along with the fear that Kenyatae might accuse him of rape.
A search of Dewan's girlfriend's apartment turns up the murder weapon. All detectives need to do now is find Dewan Poe. Police fan out in search of Dewan and soon hit pay dirt. A local gas station attendant claims he may know something about the case.
In police work, there is no bad lead. It's important to follow every lead. Some may be a dead end, some may turn out to be actually good.
Police drive to the south side of Chicago, more than 15 miles away from where Kenyatae was discovered. At the gas station, an employee describes an incident that took place the night Kenyatae disappeared.
The other night, I'm working the register.
The gas station attendant tells detectives that when he was working Sunday night, he heard a woman scream.
So I look outside and I see a couple standing there.
And there was another man wearing a mask that looked like he had a gun.
So he puts the man in the driver's seat and the woman in the passenger seat.
Get in the car and drive!
And then he himself gets in the vehicle and they speed away.
The attendant tells police he reported the incident, but detectives will need more information in order to determine if it was connected to Kenyatae's murder.
Did you see what color the car was?
It was blue.
Kenyatae's car was indeed blue, but that doesn't necessarily mean it was the one used in the carjacking witnessed by the attendant.
You have camera surveillance here too, right?
Yeah, I've got them everywhere.
If you don't care, could we have a look at that?
Hey, sure, come on back.
It was private surveillance video that really showed everything. If you're a criminal in this city, you always have to be looking over your shoulder. You think no one's watching you, but there's always an eye around.
Specifically, the video shows Darron and Kenyatae at the gas station together.
Detectives watch the video and see Darron and Kenyatae pull into the gas station.
That shows the vehicle that Kenyatae was later discovered murdered in.
The video also shows Darron and Kenyatae's children sitting in the back seat of the car.
Then a masked gunman appears in the footage.
A subject comes up armed, wearing a mask, points a gun, and carjacks him.
Is it possible Darron and Kenyatae were carjacked, and that's how Kenyatae ended up dead? Detectives mull this over as they watch the surveillance video. That's when they notice something very peculiar.
What's he doing in the trunk?
Before Darron gets back into the car, he goes to the trunk and rearranges some things around.
Yeah, that's odd.
Can you pause that right there?
Yes, sir.
This is the same trunk where Kenyatae's body was found less than 24 hours later. That's suspicious.
We don't know what's happening. And that always just kind of set off some red flags.
This is a very damning video in the sense it was never mentioned by Mr. Brewer at all. Never mentioned anything about being in the vehicle and them being carjacked.
The surveillance footage raises a bunch of questions. Why didn't Darron mention the carjacking when he reported Kenyatae missing to the police? Why was he rearranging things in the trunk?
Police are now trying to figure out, you give us our first lead, you call us to report her missing, yet you fail to say that you were carjacked. What's really the deal?
To answer those questions, detectives haul Darron back down to the station and confront him about the surveillance footage.
Darron, you know why you're here.
We saw all the surveillance at the gas station.
He basically, at that point, identifies his brother, Darron Poe, as in fact the person that carjacked him.
What happened next?
He left for Kenyatae. I didn't know he was gonna do anything like this.
Why didn't you tell us this before?
I didn't want my brother to go to prison.
Darron says that he didn't mention the carjacking initially because he was trying to protect his brother. He didn't want him to go to prison.
To detectives, Darron's news story doesn't ring entirely true.
Darron's claim that he kept the carjacking from the police to protect his brother just doesn't add up. Because again, why is he moving stuff around in the trunk?
Why he would let this happen, just get out of the car and let Darron go off without calling anybody. It just didn't seem to make any sense to me.
I'm not buying it. Stand up.
Convinced that he and brother Darron conspired to murder Kenyatae, detectives placed Darron under arrest. Shortly after that, Darron gets wind of his brother's arrest and turns himself in.
He knew they were coming for him.
Darron and Darron are charged with first-degree murder. Kenyatae's family is stunned. They can't believe Darron was involved.
Darron was pretending to be such a wonderful husband, but it was just all fake. It was fake, it was phony, it was staged. He wants to sweep everything under the rug as much as possible.
Once we found out that the husband was in custody, it was just a question of waiting it out.
But what exactly was Darron's motive for murdering Kenyatae? Protecting his brother? Keeping his homosexual affair under wraps? Or something else? As Darron and Darron's trial plays out, it becomes evident that the motive in this case was even more heinous than anyone ever imagined.
It could have been a film. It could have been either a B movie or it could have been an Oscar award-winning film. The details were just so ridiculous.
In June 2013, almost 4 years after Kenyatae Collier-Brewer was brutally murdered, the trial begins for her accused killers, her husband, Darron Brewer, and his brother, Darron Poe.
We were really anticipating the trial, wanting to just get through it, get it over with, so that they can pay for what they've done.
In an unusual move, the state decides the two brothers will be tried together, though they will be represented by separate legal counsel. And when their respective attorneys deliver their opening statements, it becomes clear the brothers are willing to throw each other under the bus in order to save their own skin.
This whole house of cards was falling apart.
It kind of became a brother against brother situation. The defense attorneys each kind of blamed the other's client. Darron Poe's attorney said he had nothing to do with it. It was all Darron Brewer's plan. Darron Brewer's attorney said he was in denial. He didn't know what was going to happen when Darron and Kenyatae drove away in that car.
But there's one thing Darron and Darron's attorneys can agree on. The dueling versions of the crime indicate there's enough reasonable doubt to acquit both men on all charges.
The defense attorneys for Darron Brewer and Darron Poe said the evidence was lacking.
Prosecutors countered that the brothers conspired to murder Kenyatae and concocted the fake carjacking as a ruse to mask their involvement in the crime. Only after the surveillance video implicated both of them in the crime did the brothers turn on each other.
There seemed to be this faithfulness where Darron would try and go do this for his brother. Then once they're in the courtroom, they're turning on each other.
As for motive, prosecutors claim Darron would go to any length, including murder, to keep his superiors at the National Guard from learning about his secret gay life.
Darron had an image to maintain, especially with the military. If they would have learned that he was gay, it may have jeopardized his career.
But prosecutors argue Darron's motive had a financial angle as well.
I think what really set everything up was the insurance money.
Apparently there was an insurance policy. It was initially $50,000 that had recently been increased another $100,000.
At the time of the murder, Darron had life insurance policies on Kenyatae totaling more than $150,000. Policies, prosecutors say, would be worthless in the event of a divorce.
If the marriage ended, the life insurance policies could go away. They would just disappear.
Darron has reached a point of no return. He's maybe feeling some sense of desperation. I've got this relationship with this fellow that I want to continue. The old motivation of a nice amount of money, it probably had him at a point where he's like, my wife, Kenyatae, has got to die.
So now he needs to move quickly. So Darron and his brother plotted together to kill her and that they would split this money.
There's an additional reason.
According to prosecutors, in DeJuan's case, the insurance money is only half the motive.
To prevent her from making a rape allegation against one of these defendants.
Not only do we have Darron trying to cash in on a life insurance policy, we also have the two brothers trying to silence Kenyatae about the rape. There aren't very many cases where you have two motives.
Ladies and gentlemen, allegations and suppositions do not a case make.
Darron's defense attorney calls the state's theory preposterous and argues that brother DeJuan acted alone when he murdered Kenyatae.
DeJuan, cold-bloodedly and with malice, took the life of Kenyatae.
They said that it was DeJuan Poe who was the actual trigger man. He's the one who stood over Kenyatae and fired 2 messengers of death into her head.
It's an allegation DeJuan's defense attorney has difficulty refuting, given police had recovered the murder weapon from underneath his bed. But if that was the case, why hadn't Darron tried to stop his brother from murdering Kenyatae? Darron's defense attorney argues it's because Darron thought DeJuan was just going to scare Kenyatae into keeping quiet about the rape allegations, and had no idea his brother intended to kill her.
That night when DeJuan carjacked Darron and Kenyatae and the kids, Darron's attorney said that he believed that they were just going to have a conversation, that DeJuan and Kenyatae were going to sit in the car and talk and figure out how to handle what had happened between them.
But prosecutors assert Darron knew exactly what was about to transpire that evening. And to back up their assertion, they call the defendant's cousin, Darron Webb, to the stand to testify.
Darron, do I understand you overheard a conversation between these two brothers?
Yes, sir. Well, there was a first attempt. They wanted to go over to her house and strangle her and make it look like a robbery gone bad.
The carjacking was not the first attempt on Kenyatae's life.
The initial plan is that DeJuan Poe is going to kill the wife and make it look like maybe an apparent robbery gone bad or something of that nature.
And what happened after that?
I guess he went and got sidetracked, and he didn't end up killing her. He ended up having sex with her.
DeJuan Poe does go to the residence. Kenyatae comes out of either the shower or the bathroom and apparently is scantily attired in just underwear and a bra.
When he went to do it, he saw her coming out of the bathroom and became aroused, and they had sex.
It's very striking to me that he went to the home to supposedly to strangle her, but had sex with her. That says something about the brother's psyche. There's something very twisted and psychotic about that.
Darron says this was the alleged rape Kenyatae told Darron about.
So now DeJuan and Darron come up with a plan that they definitely have to get rid of her. They need the life insurance money. They can't have this rape allegation out there. Darron has another lover. They must do something. They then devise a plan to do a carjacking.
Following Darron's chilling testimony, prosecutors paint a picture of what happened next. After Kenyatae finished work on the evening of October 25th, she picked up Darron and the kids and asked him to drive home because she was tired after her long shift.
He got off of the Dan Ryan Expressway on the south side of the city, and he didn't go to just the first gas station off the expressway. He went several blocks west, and that's where it all seemed to begin.
Hey, get in the car! Get in the driver's seat now! Get in the front seat!
With Darron and Kenyatae's children looking on, a masked Dewan played out the fake carjacking to an unwitting Kenyatae. After leaving the gas station, Darron pulled into a dimly lit alley not far from their home in Logan Square.
Shut the hell up and get in the trunk.
Whatever you do not hurt me.
Dewan orders her into the trunk.
Shut up before I kill you.
Darron ends up being dropped off with the kids, and then Dewan drives off with her in the trunk. He doesn't go very far before the car is discovered in very close proximity to their residence up on the north side.
According to prosecutors, unaware that she knew her abductor, a frightened Kenyatae begged for mercy.
No, please don't.
But Dewan showed none.
He ends up cold-bloodedly killing her.
It really just kind of jars you that somebody would be as cold as the prosecutors said that these men were.
It's a gruesome account, but it's also complicated and could make the jury's job difficult. Dewan pulled the trigger, but was Darron the crime's real mastermind?
I feel that Darron lured his brother in with the money. And to me, it's like this is something that he had premeditated.
And of course, in Dewan Poe's instance, obviously he was looking to have a financial gain, and now he's secondarily motivated by the fact that there's a possibility that he's gonna be arrested with her outcry of this rape that he's saying was consensual.
Between the multiple motives and conflicting accounts, it seems like the road to a guilty verdict is a bumpy one. But prosecutors still have one card left to play. And for these two alleged murderers, it will mean the difference between a life of freedom or one behind bars.
There was a good sense that the other shoe was going to drop at some point.
The trial of brothers Darron Brewer and Dewan Poe has revealed a bizarre plot that prosecutors claim culminated with the murder of Darron's wife, Kenyatae Collier-Brewer.
You got this guy that's known his wife his whole life, but all along he's got this secret life that he's trying to hide from her.
The news that Darron was gay and had relationships, and the fact that the brother was supposed to have strangled his sister-in-law and then wound up having sex with her.
There were just all of these layers to this. The failed attempt to kill her the first time in the carjacking. How cold it seemed to be driving the car with your wife in the trunk and your kids right there, and then just to walk away.
But with each brother pointing the finger at the other, is it possible they both could walk?
Despite all of the loyalty that had allegedly been shown between the two brothers, the one carrying out this plan for the other, the one trying to protect the other against the rape allegation, that all ended in the courtroom.
Despite all of the back and forth, prosecutors have an ace up their sleeve, one they've been holding since the day the two brothers were arrested.
Darron confessed on videotape.
When juries see a confession on video, it's damning evidence. There's nothing more powerful than a confession.
That pretty much blew it out the water.
Prosecutors contend Darron's confession is proof their theory about the crime is legit. And after closing arguments, the jury begins to deliberate. Kenyatae's family hopes they'll deliver some measure of justice.
When someone does something like this, you want them to be punished. And that's what we wanted. We wanted them to be punished. And as a family, we were hoping for the maximum.
This trial stands out because of the relationships and the motivations. I cover lots of murder trials. This one seemed to go a little bit deeper and seemed to be just more cruel that somebody would do this to his wife and the mother of his children, to have her in the trunk with the children in the car and just walk away.
After several hours of deliberation, the jury announces it's reached verdicts for both Darron and Dewan.
The verdict on both of the brothers was guilty. Darron was sentenced to 99 years in the Illinois Department of Corrections, and his brother, Dewan, received life sentence plus 21 years.
It was a relief. They got what they deserved. You act like an animal, then you need to be treated like one.
Darron and his brother were going down for Kenyatae's murder. They both blamed each other, and now they're both serving hard time.
Although Kenyatae's family feels vindicated, the verdicts can't fill the void created by her death or the pain wrought by Darron and Dewan's cold-blooded actions motivated by secrets, greed, and double lives.
It's like somebody has like really ripped your heart right out of your chest. You know, no anesthesia, just in and out. Just clawed your heart out of your chest. Ripped a hole right through the family. Unless you've gone through it, you really don't know and really don't have a clue.
We're looking at two young men who clearly have some severe sociopathy within them. At best, she ran into some bad characters. At worst, she walked into a setup with two brothers who had nefarious designs from the beginning.
What should have been a promising future for a young soldier in the Illinois National Guard and his nurse wife and their three lovely children, and now, one parent's dead, one's gonna be in the penitentiary for life. These kids are gonna have a life without a father and without a mother.
We have to tell them about her smile. We have to tell them how bright she was, that she loved you guys. And that it wasn't her choice to not be your mom anymore. He took that, just snatched away.